What's going on, guys? Smoking a blunt here, Optimal Diamond, and I have Mr. Mack here on the line. He has over 20 plus years, 2 decades of Intel experience and knowledge of the world and historical events and national security frameworks of our society and our government. Nevertheless, Mr. Mack, how are you doing, Mr. Mack?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, this video will be predicated mainly on your position and where you're coming from in terms of a right-wing aspect, the aspect of the Trump coalition, I should say. And you're a Trump supporter. You voted for Donald Trump. And
yes, I did.
And my first question to you is, what will happen exactly in terms of the broader sense of a revolutionary sense with the right-wing aspect of things? What will be a direct response to Joe Biden if there is a president-elect Joe Biden and Donald Trump is in the White House basically telling his base, his supporters, to not accept what has just happened? What will be the direct steps and actions?
Well, I'm going to try to represent what I believe is the majority of the movement that made Trump president, that's behind Trump, not the fringe groups or the whatever weirdos that, I'm going to try to talk on the main base that supports Trump. And what there's a call to is more of a old school or originalism constitutionality, right? Which is kind of left the Supreme Court, except for Scalia, who passed away at the end of Obama's term. And what you see is people very afraid and concerned about their Second Amendment rights, because there's quite a bit of people that believe that our country won't survive as a free country if Biden wins. You'll see kind of a more permanent totalitarian response to any type of objection, in a similar way to the way you see it with the stay-at-home orders with the virus, with kind of just do as we say, and the Bill of Rights doesn't apply right now. And the New Jersey governor said, well, the Bill of Rights is out of my pay grade. So in the chance that Biden gets elected, I think you're going to have people cling to their guns and religion, the way Obama kind of was making fun of people who ended up supporting Trump.
Really. So the emergence, essentially, of another Tea Party, basically, is what you're saying. But except this is going to be much more radical in the sense of the right to bear arms.
This would be more of you would probably hear more people saying the Second Amendment gives me my right to carry my weapons and to be able to defend myself and my property. And because people would be if we say we went back to just the way things were under Obama, since everything has been kind of like the cat's been let out of the bag with Trump, if we tried to go back to that type of thing, which I think Biden would,
that's what he's campaigning on. That's what he's campaigning on. That's what he wants. And people are voting for him in droves on that very aspect, what you just said. How do we move past that?
So you'd see something like a Tea Party, but more like, but the Tea Party was small in comparison to what you would see now. And you can already see that, how, when Trump was, first on the scene, you had a lot of response by Antifa, and they weren't, always peaceful. Now you see people out protesting their state governments, and they're, pretty pissed off, and sometimes in the one case I remember I saw in Virginia, people started bringing their guns. Well, that would be kind of like, that's what I think it would look like in a lot of places.
Really? So anarchy basically, in the sense of just lashing back out against what is currently happening in front of them. Just completely.
Constitutionalists believe, what the Declaration of Independence says. I know it's not the Constitution, but they believe that generally if your government is screwing you over, you're supposed to, replace it with one that represents you.
And I agree with that. I agree with that very notion, which is what the whole entire Sanders movement was about, still is, even though Bernie has sold out and sold his soul and basically joined the media industrial complex and the DNC machine, just the whole entire apparatus. He's joined that and he's abandoned his own movement. That's what the Sanders movement was about, which is why I say there could be a coalescing within the right-wing radical base in which you're a part of, which got Trump in the White House, which is not standing for a lot of the things that are happening right now. But a lot of people, a lot of pundits would say this is just a small minority. This is just a small base, ultimately, because remember, Trump didn't even get as many votes as Romney did in certain states, including Michigan itself. So that's ultimately the argument to put Biden into the White House. And quite frankly, I am seeing this. Like the evidence is showing. Like as I've been debating with you about over the past couple of weeks within the suburbanites and things of that nature, the upper echelons of the parties, they're the ones who are basically pushing this agenda forward. So,
well, just a couple things to that point right there. First of all, I consider myself a constitutional moderate. In the 90s, back in the day when, I was a teenager and kind of first learning about this stuff, what you would consider me now would be considered back then a constitutional moderate. Actually, that was the definition of it. And now it's considered radical right wing because of how things have swung. But I think combined, just adding to what you said about the strength of Biden, is the fact that he has that, the media industrial complex on his side, but he also has something to capitalize off, and that's the hatred of Trump, or just the distaste for his personality, his way of talking about things. People who see themselves as sophisticated and educated, they're not going to associate with somebody, Donald Trump. He's not their guy. And Biden, can barely put a sentence together, but he's going to get a lot of votes just off that.
Just off of that, just because his name is Joe Biden and he was a part of the Obama coalition and really just the Biden brand itself, because if you go on his website or anything associated with him, it's just his name, it's just Biden, and that's what they're primarily promoting, just that brand name. No policies that are really going to affect anybody's lives, nothing that's really going to drastically happen. Just know it's going to be like the Obama years.
Yep, that's exactly what I see too.
And people are voting for him in droves, which is why I say, once again to my question, this is how a radical left and a radical right can coalesce together to really be a true uprising, radical uprising with a Biden presidency.
I hope that what you consider the radical right, I hope Trump people and people who would support Bernie could get together. That's a big hope that I have. There are some parts or factions of people who support Bernie who, let's say people who are just against private property rights, people who go all the way left and who are, who follow Rousseau and Marx and, they don't believe in private property. They believe in, pretty much the radical Communist Manifesto. Those people I don't think can come over. But people who have a general appreciation for private property, for general, constitutional freedoms, coupled with the responsibility of what it takes to, follow laws and have some type of a middle ground. Trump really ran on, and I think supports personally an idea that I think Bernie supports, which is to take care of American people, that people in America generally need to be better taken care of. Higher quality healthcare, higher accessibility for healthcare, higher quality jobs, higher paying jobs.
But see, this is where we
care for Americans.
And that's the problem that we have with Trump.
Getting there, but that's a similar idea.
Correct. And this is the problem that we have with Trump, though. The thing is, his first couple years, he spent his whole entire time trying to strip people from the healthcare that they have. Literally almost everyone, trying to derail the system, and it took somebody from his own party who is no longer with us to stop him.
Yeah.
So
what I would say about that is he wanted to I think in his mind, and I think still in his mind, he wants to eradicate all the red tape tied to the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. There's so much red tape to that actually replacing it entirely would provide better health care for everybody.
But there was no alternative. There was no alternative. There was no alternative. That's the problem. There was no alternative. He wanted to strip it away, but there was no alternative. Now, because there's a pandemic, there's all of a sudden alternatives to help people.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how you would think that. I don't think that there isn't an alternative. I just don't think it's been articulated well yet. And I think because the America First agenda, the agenda that he ran on when he had to move out Steve Bannon and Sebastian Gorka, and he had to compromise a lot of that.
Compromise Trump compromised the man who ran on going against the whole entire establishment class.
Yes,
compromised.
He compromised to keep himself from getting impeached, and they stopped going after Mitch McConnell. They got Bannon out of the White House, and he really had to. When Bannon left, he said the agenda of Trump is put on hold. It's put on hold. They're compromising. But really, he could have said, well, I'm the president now, and we're going to have a hot war if you want one. But instead, he said, I'm going to have to, become friends with these people who I just criticized for the last 2 years, and we're going to have to, come to a common ground. And that's why you've seen a watered-down version of Trump, because he knew he would either have to fight a war to stay in power, or he would have been impeached. And that the war thing, it's just
which he's actively doing. He's actively bombing Iran right now as we speak. He's actively bombing Iran for no reason, no reasons, every time, no reason, no valid reason. Really, just keep this. It's just the same playbook. That's the problem. He's already a part of the whole entire echelon of things. The way things have been done in Washington for the past, I don't know, maybe half a century. That's the problem.
Yeah,
he's part of the military-industrial complex, and he's part of the money-making system because he wants to make money for himself and his donors and people who are at his best interest, I should say.
Yeah, I can see how you would think that. The people, the movement, the base movement, the majority movement that he represents, actually has a lot of hopes that he can, have more of what he initially ran on done in a second term. Every single president has to compromise what they run on. I think the statistic was
really, even though he came in with the House in the United States Senate and ultimately the Supreme Court, he had to compromise, Mr. Mack.
Well, Paul Ryan was the speaker of the House, and he was an anti-Trumper.
But they ultimately got done what they wanted. That's why Paul Ryan just retired, because they passed that massive tax overhaul that was bigger than Ronald Reagan's.
Yeah, I understand that, but we don't see it like that. We see it as
really.
We see it as Paul Ryan got booted. We didn't see it as Paul Ryan and Trump worked together to get what they want. That is one thing, maybe the only real big thing that they saw similar on.
The biggest thing, ultimately, what Ronald Reagan gave his life for in terms of American politics, what he really believed in, trickle-down economics at its finest. That's all it was.
Well, I can't argue I can't argue the specifics of the tax cuts because I don't know all the specifics. First of all, I don't want to pretend that I do. And second of all, I do know that was kind of the one thing, or one of the major, or if not the only really major thing that legislatively Trump could compromise on with Paul Ryan and the establishment Republicans that were running the show when he took office.
See, Trump is like Obama to us. He campaigned like an outsider when it came to the Republican primaries. He beat everybody. He beat the Jeb Bushes. He beat the Marco Rubios. He beat the Ted Cruzes. He beat everybody, the John Kasichs. He beat everybody. He showed that he was truly a political outsider in that sense. He's a true campaigner, which is why I give him a shot in this election. He still hasn't gotten to full campaign swing mode, but he's a fraud to us because he says these things while he's campaigning. He wants health care for everyone. He wants everyone to succeed and have a sustainable job or have a sustainable business, whatever it is that they're doing, but yet he's constantly fucking and screwing the American people.
Yeah, I could see how that would be a way that a Bernie supporter would see it, because a Bernie supporter, and I think I remember watching you on one of your previous shows, that you want everybody to be taken care of, and by using the government and the progressive platform, you can control that, because you could do it through regulation, you can do it through legislation,
Precisely.
You can do it through executive order.
Precisely.
Everybody's being taken care of.
Precisely.
It's a control
which
thing.
will ultimately have to happen, because these companies are going to soon realize that they don't need people to actually do what they want. There's technology has always been there. They've always had it, and now you don't think, honestly, CEOs are sitting around the country thinking about how they're going to use technology within the future to avoid something like this from happening to their businesses again?
Do I think they're going to try to use technology to? I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think as a smart business owner, that's exactly what you're gonna do.
Precisely. So
why not have
we will have to move into regulation to force companies and corporations and ultimately the government itself to help the American people. That's inevitable. That will have to happen. It will have to happen. They're doing it right now as we speak, literally. And it will become inevitable.
I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think Trump has a problem with that either. I think that's something that you actually have in common with him. But let me go back to your criticism about him saying he's going to take care of the American people and then somewhat screwing some people. And that's I think the difference between a Bernie supporter and a Trump supporter is that a Bernie supporter is okay with using the government, a much bigger government, and much higher taxes to control the fact that people will be taken care of. A Trump supporter, rather, the government make it as easy as it possibly can for people to succeed, as easy as it possibly can be, but still give the person the responsibility. So you're still not going to have people to say, yes, I'm going to take the responsibility to make sure that I'm taken care of and my people are taken care of.
Mr. Mack, see, the thing is, this is the biggest problem that we progressives have with conservatives and hardcore conservatives who just truly believe in the Constitution and who just truly believe in right-wing politics. You say you want true independence and true just nothing from the government, but at the same time, most of the people who thrive and succeed off of the benefits of the government within the past century have been mainly people who are conservatives and Republicans and live in these deep rural areas across America.
Yep.
This is the most contradictory. It's the funniest thing ever, Mr. Mack. Think about that.
You have an extremely valid, very, very valid criticism of the Republican Party and conservatives, but I don't think that position is what the Trump movement is about. The Trump movement is not about not using the government. The government is supposed to be used. So the difference is in the Bush years, you have the majority Republicans talking about people just kind of figuring it out on their own and freedom, and we want to have free trade, prices are lower, all these things that kind of got us where we were, and they were all valid criticisms of conservatism. Okay, what Trump believes and what people believe who support Trump is that they're not arguing that anymore. They're saying it's okay to use the government to help people. It's okay to use the government. It's just how they're using it and how much. But people who are behind Trump are much more okay with using the government than the type of conservative that 5 years ago might have been the majority, or the type of person who might have been
precisely.
Really.
And that leads me to the point. That is the establishment within the Democratic and the Republican parties. Those type of voters, they're going to vote for them in default. But ultimately, with a Biden presidency, in the hope that an independent comes along or someone of a third party comes along, there is the chance to coalesce there. You see what I'm saying? The chance there
Yes.
to coalesce within the within a revolution, basically an anarchic type of way. What you're saying, because your base of the party will be upset and extremely angry, and so will mine, and there will be a
Yeah.
void there, and a void there that one candidate can take advantage of. It just takes the right person.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. I'm just not sure that scenario would actually happen. I think that the authoritarian nature of the Biden and Obama people would crush it, and
You're
that's
probably
why
right about that.
I have a different hope. I think my hope is that the people like you and the people like me could get together before that happens, because I don't want to see thousands or even more than that of Americans die, or people start using or the government start using surveillance and technology the way China has.
And that's another criticism of Trump, basically, which is why we're so fearful of the future of another election of him, even because heck, he's advanced the Patriot Act. He hasn't dismantled it in any way, shape, or form. So I mean, he's constantly just a regeneration and a revolving door of the swamp in which he said he was going to drain and get rid of.
Yeah, we don't see it like that. I can see how you see it like that, but we see Trump as really fighting that swamp as strongly as he possibly could.
His cabinet is the swamp, Mr. Mack. His cabinet is the swamp. This is what we don't get about him. His cabinet is the swamp. His cabinet is the swamp. Literally, all of them have been in positions to make millions of dollars off of the U.S. government and have done it.
So the way we see it is that Trump did the best he could to take people who knew the system in the system. He did compromise to put people there that were part of the system, were part of the establishment, but he also put people in the system who wanted true reform. So an example of that would be, there's a lot of conservatives like that wanted Trump, that have kind of had no person to vote for in a presidential election in a really long time. I mean, McCain versus Obama, no. Mitt Romney versus Obama, no. Like, they haven't had representation. So not in a national election. So there's been a lot of people who have not really had a person that really represented them well to vote for. Okay, but they wanted real reform. So we see a lot of those picks as, first of all, compromises with the establishment, and second of all, people in the system that know the system, that actually want to make significant changes that support more of what Trump ran on. And he hasn't been able to have a lot of power doing that. He's been under impeachment for the entire time they wanted to impeach him. They've been trying. It was Russia. He was under Mueller. Mueller had an unbelievable amount of power. And now we're finding out that his top national security advisor, Mike Flynn, was set up illegally by the FBI. And now they have evidence, and they're coming out with that. And
I mean, it
a
doesn't really.
lot of Trump supporters are waiting for Durham's report, because people want justice when it comes to the corrupt FBI people who were there when Trump transitioned.
I hear that, but it's really, I don't know. It's really just flabbergasting, I guess you could say, to the masses of us, which is why Trump has a chance, an actual shot of losing. We just, like I said, that's just where we just see things differently. Like I said, we agree with how Trump is a campaigner and how he's a great campaigner and how he's able to influence your base, which was just sitting there waiting on the right candidate to come along, essentially. But Trump has brought in literally the swamp. It doesn't really matter whether or not if they got the things they got illegally. It's the fact that they did the things that they did in order to get to where they got. That's like Trump understands how to play the tit for tat political game that people get tired of, and that ultimately people aren't just going to look into completely all the way to just see how deeply corrupt he is. But at the same time, he's able to persuade voters, independent voters who are dissuaded and disaffected by the Democratic and Republican parties, come over to him. Perhaps even Bernie supporters, 10 or 20% of Bernie supporters, come over and help him win. He's able to do that, which is why I believe everyone's missing how much of a brilliant campaigner and phenomenon Donald Trump is. I'll give him credit. I'll give him credit.
I think there's nobody that supports Trump that thinks he's perfect. There's nobody that supports Trump that I know that thinks he hasn't done stuff that's shady. But what they do believe, and Trump supporters do believe, is that whatever shadiness exists behind Trump, it's nothing compared to Biden. It's nothing compared to Obama. It's nothing compared to the Clintons. And really, it's not even compared to the Bushes. And that's what Trump people believe.
This is where I want to get. Why do you all believe that? Why do you all believe that? Because when he's literally doing the same thing, that's why I want to, it's literally contradictory. He criticized Obama for golfing, but a couple weeks later, he's golfing himself. Literally. There's evidence of this. Literally evidence. It's not fake media and nothing. None of that. He was literally out there.
Oh, yeah. They've done that. That's just stupid. That's just stupid bull crap. I mean, every single president, no matter who's president, they did it my whole life. Bush is golfing all the time. Obama's golfing all the time.
But when Trump literally campaigned on this, Trump campaigned. You see how you want to give him a pass there. This is the disconnect.
They've done it to all.
This is the disconnect. All right, yeah. See, this is the disconnect there, because literally, Trump is a hypocrite because he literally is doing the same thing. He campaigned on a lot of this stuff and persuaded a lot of people to vote for him and come out for him in droves, ultimately. And he got them to believe that he's different when he's the same. This is what we are trying to understand about the Trump voter. Are you really willing to just bypass everything that's right there? Which, if you say that, I respect even more. I respect even more because of the ultimate ideology at the end of the day. I respect that.
Yeah, we see him as somebody who's actually very different. Conservatives who are constitutionalists, people who are part of the movement that supports Trump, we don't see him as being similar to the Bushes. We don't see him being similar to Nixon. We don't see him being... No, we don't.
Mr. Matt.
We see him being kind of similar to Reagan, but not even that. We see America First as being a pre-World War II era party who believed that the government of the United States should really be looking inward more than looking outward, looking inward for the benefit of the people, similar to and JFK was a part of that. JFK was a part of that when he was younger. And they said, they didn't want to go to World War II, so they were Nazi sympathizers because they didn't want to fight another war in Europe. Well, again, maybe
JFK actually got a medal, though. JFK actually got a medal.
Who were part of America First.
JFK actually got a medal for saving his friend in war. JFK actually got a medal for saving his friend in war, though, I have to say, when Trump never went. Trump made up things about his feet and things of that nature that I won't just dive into completely all the way, but made up various things so he could avoid going to the same war that he basically criticized many people of going into and being captured in.
You can't get away from the fact that he got out of going to Vietnam. A lot of people did.
Oh man, a lot of people were forced to go because of just who they are and the socioeconomic background and economic background in which they come from, and just who they are.
I'm not arguing against that. That's totally correct.
Many people were forced to go, and Trump, you see the contradictions here. This is the problem. You see the contradictions here. He's supposed to be the America First president, and just that true brand of patriotism to his country, and truly. In that true sense, I should say, of true conservatism in the whole package in a outsider sense, I should say. He's supposed to be representing that, but yet he's directly the
like
opposite.
I said, he's not Nixon. It's not like all conservatives were for the Vietnam War. I mean, it was really, we don't need to get into that, but we don't look back and say, yeah, Vietnam, yeah, we were such great Americans. It was so worth it. We don't look at it like that. My point was this. Was that there was a movement that was kind of dormant for a long time. Okay, it kind of poked its head out here and there. It didn't come up in a national sense until Ross Perot. Okay, and a lot of the positions of Ross Perot, okay, were positions of Donald Trump, especially on trade. Ross Perot went on CNN in the early 90s to debate Al Gore. And Al Gore was promoting NAFTA, which was written by the first Bush. Okay, it was passed under Clinton. And they said to Ross Perot in another interview, when are jobs from America going to stop leaving? He said, when the Mexican worker makes as much as the American worker, then the jobs in America will stop leaving. Which means all the American worker jobs were either going to disappear or that they were going to be decreased in wage growth. Okay, so when Trump went in, and that was a big position of Ross Perot, he's like, we need to do something about that. We need to reverse NAFTA. It was absolutely horrible. It screwed over the United States. It screwed over especially the American worker in the Rust Belt, and that's why he won most of the Rust Belt states.
While Bill Clinton drastically enhanced NAFTA and drastically enhanced the trade agreements that were in place with that Bush era type of mentality.
Exactly. It was very much a Bush-Clinton thing, and Obama too, unfortunately.
You see, that's where we agree.
Yeah, we are for the American worker. We are for people being able to get high-paying jobs, good health care, being able to be responsible to take care of themselves and their families, and not to be either used by corporations or really oppressed by the fact that your job can either be outsourced or be taken by somebody who doesn't have the legality that you have or the actual devotion to the country.
Yes, completely. And like I say, the months to come, things to come, like I say, poll numbers are changing every single day drastically. There's no telling what could happen. Trump might be able to bounce back. Like I say, ultimately, the way things are looking right now in the forecast, it's not really looking too good, I should say. But at the same time, things could change. Things could drastically change. But like I said, my whole entire argument to you had always been, because the Democrats, the establishment Democrats, are going into these states that they need to win, that the math is there. If they win these certain states, they will win no matter what. They have elected Democratic governors in these states. So they have the blueprint to win in these states. So ultimately, it's all there for Biden to win, even if he is a dismal, terrible dementia candidate. It's all there for him still to win.
That's true. I can't disagree. It's not a slam dunk either way.
It's not a slam dunk, which is why I say Trump can still prevail and perhaps pull off another miracle, basically, with a full house, because that's ultimately what he'll have to do again. That's really the way things are starting to shape up, like I've been saying, because Arizona, Florida, Ohio, a lot of these states, especially in regards to trade, what we were just discussing, should not be on the table for Trump if he truly is that populist candidate for the people, for the worker.
Yep.
So I want you to think about that. The worker, if he's truly for the worker in regards to trade, the way he says he is, these states should not be in play.
Well, the other thing is that he was, hailing himself as victor of having such a great economy, and now he doesn't. He can't say that anymore. So coming out of this pandemic, he's going to have an opportunity to say, well, I can bring us out of it. I can take us through a pandemic. I can bring us out of it and get people's jobs back. We'll see if he can make it happen.
Do you really believe he's going to make it happen? Do you really believe he's going to ultimately live up to be what he says he is if he is reelected? What will be different with Trump if he's reelected?
I think you're going to have a real change in healthcare, a radical change in healthcare that will be much better for
How will it be though,
most
Mr.
Americans.
Mack? This is where I have to stop you though. How will it be when he came in with full authority, full unilateral control of the United States government? And you're telling me with a House now divided, basically, not even basically, it is with a Pelosi back in power. She's not going to relinquish that easily. So now you're telling me he's going to pass somehow all these massive progressive champion bills when yet he doesn't even have unilateral control in Congress to do it.
What I'm telling you is that if he gets reelected and he gets control of Congress, you will see much more of what he originally campaigned on. We do not believe and we do not support the first Congress that he was under. And that's why they didn't really fight for the House.
Okay.
We had Paul Ryan that was really a really bad House leader for the Trump presidency, really bad. And we had people in the Senate who were not really sure exactly what to do because the small margin he had in the Senate, he was really hard on Lindsey Graham in the first presidential election and the primaries. He was really hard on Ted Cruz. They were railing on McConnell all the time.
And they all caved. They all bended to Trump's. They all bended to Trump's knees. So ultimately, why couldn't he get the things done that he wanted?
It took time. That did not happen automatically. That took time and a lot of compromise, particularly after the first 6 to 8 months.
When
and
Trump
by that
was still
point,
Trump was still Trump
I think
elect.
we see Paul Ryan as being part of the resistance, not being part of Trump's team or Trump's ideology. So you had a slim margin that was blocked by your own party with McCain when he was still alive, and you had a House that really was led by somebody who was against a lot of what Trump stood for. And that's what we believe.
And how will he get things done? So you're saying things will be better with, like I said, a Democratic House, perhaps maybe even a flipped Democratic Senate, maybe.
Well, I would say in order to get the things that he really wants done, he would have to get control over Congress again, to the degree that we hope that the degree that we voted for. If he does get control, if the Republicans do get control of Congress again, I think it'll be a radical difference than the first 2 years of his presidency because he'll have a lot more support.
And I like how you said that, if they get control back, because it looks like they're not going to after this election. Even in the midterms, there's no just great evidence that they would get any part of Congress back at this point in time, like I said, because their main establishment base is eroding. So maybe for God's sake, maybe it's for the better of the Republican Party to rethink itself or strategize itself, like I said, because the ultimate establishment base is corroding, basically, and going to the Democrats in droves. That suburbanite base.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and I think partially, I don't know if it was strategic or it's hard to tell why they kind of did not campaign really well for the House in the midterm elections. But the fact that the Republican Party is having to, do some soul searching, and they actually have to find new people that support a new vision and not the same old crap that people voted against in 2016, I don't think that's a bad thing.
I mean, Newt Gingrich's, his old seat was taken by Lucy Macbeth, a Democrat, a black woman, basically arguing for things that he would never argue for. Yeah. So, do you see what's happening? Do you see that's what I'm telling you. This whole entire theory of Trump being able to accomplish what he originally wants is just not going to happen, because that base that he would even need to keep the Republican Party afloat is slowly going away.
No, we don't see it like that. We see that base. We don't want that base there. That base is holding us back. We want more people who are supportive of real reforms.
And that's what I'm saying. With them going away, you all see it as you all are taking over the party, which in due time and longevity, you are doing, because while doing that, I'm telling you, you're going to lose, basically, ultimately. You're going to lose to the
Yeah,
Democrats.
and I think that the strategy is to befriend people that can be I guess worked with, which is why you compromise. He did compromise with part of the establishment, and that's where we started with this. That's why you compromise with part of the establishment. First of all, so he doesn't get impeached, but second of all, so you don't pull the whole rug out of the system, because that would cause true chaos.
And
And I
with him
think if he
compromising,
pushed his agenda the way he ran on it in the first year, okay, you would have had real chaos, because he wouldn't have had support.
isn't
from
that
the
what you
second year.
wanted? Isn't that's what you all wanted, though? That's what he campaigned on. That's what you all wanted. You wanted him to go in there and blow up the system. You wanted him to go in there and be the rah-rah man, to say, no, this is how things are going to go, to blow everything up and to completely start over, ultimately.
You know, they say everybody's an atheist until you're in a foxhole. People don't want to have a gunfight in 2016. They don't want to have a gunfight in 2020. It would have probably taken a gunfight, and I don't. Imagine a presidency with both houses and the party leadership. It would have been a total disaster. And Trump didn't want that. Trump didn't want that. And most of his followers didn't want that either. They just didn't realize that
Really?
in order to
So what's the point?
truly-
What's the point, really, then, at that point? If he's not going to just do what you all want him to do, what he's campaigning on, you know he's going to compromise, what's the point? Because ultimately, from that first compromise, he's not going to get done anything that he ever said. Ever.
Yeah, we don't see it like that. We see it that it can be done. We rather see it done through a peaceful process and through a legitimate process. And that's, you can't be,
The way Trump is,
totally shredded up.
I'll say this: he'll probably be able to get most of the things done that many of the conservative Republicans have always wanted for decades and for years, ultimately, if he's reelected. Because Mitch McConnell, he is, how can I put this? He's a mathematician, and quite frankly, he's a genius. Why not control things through the courts and put through the judges that they want ultimately? Because that's ultimately what the Republicans have always based their whole entire theory on anyway. I should say, since the inception of their party, I should say, really putting all their power into lower courts and to, how can I put this? Just really maintaining power through state power, state control, state legislators, governors, courts, judges, things of that nature, circuit courts, all of that, basically, ultimately. They have
that's federalism. Yep.
They have always gotten that. They have always understood that and gotten that. And that's one thing that Obama was criticized for heavily, because he did not understand that and get that ultimately, but Mitch McConnell does. So that's ultimately what Mitch McConnell's doing. And yes, with Trump pushing these judges through in terms of the Senate and confirmation and things of that nature, yes, he probably will get a lot of things done that he wants. But my thing is, will it actually help the masses? And when it doesn't, that's where you'll see a real big political revolution at the end of the day.
If it doesn't, you're right. If he gets a second chance and it doesn't, then there will be. People will really rebel. I think
because my thing is
really wanting a different system.
Because my thing is, do you really think Mitch McConnell is pushing all these judges through, and they're really not going to go through with the, how can I put this, the main establishment agenda of the Republican Party in terms of just true conservatism in that sense? You don't think they're going to continue to do that, not continue to do that? They're already doing it now through packages that are coming through Congress, I should say, basically giving trillions of dollars to companies that aren't needing it, aren't asking for it, but they're just doing it because they have to let them get richer and richer, because these are their donors and people they respect more so than the American people. We're already seeing that now with just stuff like this. So what do you think is going to happen when they are continuously pushing these judges through, and then Trump has all this power constitutionally in that sense, in terms of a Supreme Court and in terms of circuit judges across the country?
Well, what the judges have power of doing is, really negating things that other parts of the government does, negating or promoting it.
Yeah, and then if they agree with Trump, then he can do what he wants in that sense, like an oligarch. That's what I'm saying.
That's true, and that's how Obama got a lot of his stuff done. But I think that if Trump does have that power personally, I think he'll use it to do more of his agenda. I don't think he's on Mitch McConnell's agenda. He's very different from Mitch McConnell, but he had to compromise with them again to keep from getting impeached.
That's the problem. That's the problem. I hear what you're saying, but why would he have to compromise in fear of impeachment if he's not a guilty man? Why have to go through all that?
Because it's a political thing.
No. He's a guilty man. It's not a political thing. He's a guilty man. You wouldn't even have to do those steps and actions if you're not a guilty man.
It doesn't matter if you have a jury. You know this. If you have a jury that is biased against the defendant, it doesn't matter if he's guilty or innocent. They'll hang him.
Okay, that you're right about that. But once again, there shouldn't be any evidence to begin with to even put us in a jury process. You get where I'm going at? Like that's Trump. He's lived his whole entire life that way in terms of a mob style sense with Roger Stone and all his various lawyers and actors that have always been around him in terms of trying to get power in that sense. And now he's at his highest point in which he can be at in terms of accumulating this power and wealth and all that. Like I said, all he's done is advance his Trump motels and Trump towers across the country and across the globe, making military leaders and foreign leaders and dictators and even his vice president go hundreds of miles to go to his resorts that are in different parts of the world just so he can make money off of them. All the Secret Service agents have to stay there, all the resources they have to use. It's just a big game, and that's ultimately the way progressives see it.
And I'll refer to Trump's words on this. He said, I was a part of this system, and that's why I know how to fix it. I'm not arguing that he wasn't part of the system, that he didn't use the system. What he did do was he used the system throughout his life for his own personal benefit, but he followed the law, which is why they haven't been able to get him for anything, even though it appears that there was certain things that were definitely unethical, but that's only appearance. He did a really good job throughout his life of using the system and being in the system in order to really have his personal interests, capitalized on. And he did it to get to the presidency too. But he also said he's going to fix the system because he knows how to use it. He knows how they created it and why. And that's what we hope for.
But he's still using the system for his gain and benefit. That's why we're just like,
we don't expect any politician to not actually have any gain off of what they do. I mean, every single president that comes out of office ends up being rich. Look at the Clintons. Obama bought this huge mansion after. Where did he get all his money?
Their foundations in which they used to funnel money and embezzle money through, and ultimately keep the game going through the media industrial complex, the military industrial complex, book tours, different speeches that they get paid for, all that great stuff. Yes.
Yeah, it's a ton of different types of ways to get personal gain. None of them have ever not done that.
Okay, that's true. But the thing is, like I said, Trump campaigned on being the outsider, and yet you all expect him to basically do some of these same things, but still help when ultimately the gain is outweighing the help.
Yeah, well, we see. Okay, so somebody who's a Trump supporter sees a lot more victories than I think somebody who is against him. The media industrial complex likes to paint the picture that Trump hasn't had any victories, and there were so many little things that he won on that's very satisfying to the movement.
What do you think is Trump's biggest achievement of his presidency?
Oh man, you're tiring me out here. I didn't know I was gonna have a whole hour interview.
Hey man, hey, you asked for it. I said, why not? I'm gonna stretch him out.
So Trump's biggest accomplishments, I think Trump really was a real serious threat. And I'm going to look at it constitutionally. And there's a lot of places I could start with. For whatever reason, and I didn't prepare for this, the very first thing that comes to mind is the First and Second Amendment. Our First and Second Amendment were seriously under attack. And if you look at the beginning of Trump's first campaign. They invited him on SNL. They joked around with him. He was friends with people at NBC. And then all of a sudden, the same things that he had been saying for years, he became this demonic figure to the media industrial complex. Okay? Because he actually started getting real political clout using speech that has not been allowed in public for a very long time. Okay? Some of it is objectionable, some of it is offensive, but guess what?
It was appealing. It was
human
appealing.
beings are objectionable and offensive people. And to pretend that Obama wasn't objectionable and offensive, and Clinton's weren't, and Bush wasn't, is just not true. They just knew how to spin the game better.
Yes.
So the first,
yes.
so that's where I start. Is the First and Second Amendment. The Second Amendment for Trump supporters is huge because people were seriously afraid, and they still are, that the government might take away really their livelihood because of political correctness and an ideology. So that's where I start. But I can go on for hours.
So ultimately, his biggest achievements are preserving the constitutional body. The most important aspects to you all is the First and Second Amendment.
Well, that's just what came to mind first, Hakeem. We have positions on the Constitution, positions on the Supreme Court. We have positions on international issues. The fact that NATO was using the United States and not paying into it. The fact that China has been bleeding us dry because all our manufacturing is done there. The fact that the American worker was being killed off by China and by NATO. All the jobs, when I was working in Mesquite and working in Dallas and working in Garland, I made friends with a lot of people who had a bleak economic outlook because of opportunities that were once there. They're not there anymore. And people who understand the economic struggles that go on with trade deals, like the ones that we've had with China and NATO and NAFTA, they realize that their neighbors, the people that they care about, the people who need money the most, who actually people say they care about the poor, that those jobs have gone. That a lot of people are poor because those jobs aren't there anymore. And to really, I guess, love your neighbor and care about your neighbor is to make sure that they're taken care of the best that they can, and so that they can make their own livelihood and have the pride and the opportunity to have the American dream that used to be there for a lot more people. So, that's a huge part of it right there.
Precisely. Yes, it was a pleasure having you on today, Mr. Mack, talking to you about various issues about the Trump White House and how things will look in terms of branching together on the coalitions and things of that nature. Like I said, we'll have to get more into it in terms of Trump's achievements. That would have to be, definitely part 2. Once again, yes, it was a pleasure, Mr. Mack.
Dude, I enjoyed every single minute. I would love to do it again, and I really appreciate it.